She told them no children allowed, ever. But when her baby slipped underwater in silence, the only person close enough to hear was the 10-year-old boy she'd screamed at that morning. Now he's running toward her pool, and she's frozen in the doorway, watching her worst fear and her greatest shame collide in the same breath. The gate slammed with enough force to rattle the fence posts. "I said no," Victoria Hartwell's voice carried across 3 backyards, sharp enough to cut glass. "No children near my pool, not yours, not anyone's. Do you understand me?" The woman on the other side, Rachel something, she'd moved in 2 months ago, clutched her son's shoulder. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, skinny as a rail, with dark eyes that absorbed everything without flinching. "We weren't even in your yard," Rachel said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Daniel's ball went over the fence. He was just trying to get it back. I don't care if the Declaration of Independence went over my fence. You tell your kid to stay away from my property." Victoria crossed her arms, her designer sundress pristine against the backdrop of her immaculate landscaping. "Children are careless. Children are destructive, and children do not belong near an expensive saltwater pool system that cost more than your car." Rachel's face flushed red. "You're unbelievable. I'm a homeowner protecting my investment. Maybe if you'd worked harder in life, you'd understand." Daniel tugged his mother's hand. "Mom, let's just go." But Rachel wasn't finished. "You know what? I feel sorry for you. I really do. Living in that big house all alone, so bitter you can't stand the sound of a child laughing. Get off my property before I call the police." Victoria turned on her heel and marched back inside, her heart hammering with righteous indignation. Through the kitchen window, she watched Rachel and Daniel retreat down the sidewalk, the ball forgotten in the grass. Good, maybe now they'd finally learn. The house settled into its usual silence. Victoria poured herself a glass of Chardonnay, surveying her domain. 14 years she'd lived here. 14 years of maintaining perfection. The pristine white furniture, the gallery where the art collection, the pool that sparkled like a Caribbean postcard. Her phone buzzed. "Mark, of course." "I'm not changing my mind," she answered. Her ex-husband's sigh traveled clearly through the connection. "Victoria, she's 6 months old, 1 weekend. That's all I'm asking." "You have her every other weekend. That's what the custody agreement says." "Sarah's mother is in the hospital. We need to be there. You're Lily's mother, too. And you're the one who wanted this divorce. You're the one who said I was too rigid, too controlling, too—" She stopped herself. "Figure it out yourself, Mark. I have plans." She hung up before he could respond. The wine tasted sour. Victoria had worked hard for this life. Climbed from a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens to a 6-figure marketing career, married the right man, bought the right house in the right neighborhood. She'd done everything correctly. The fact that Mark couldn't appreciate order and discipline wasn't her fault. The fact that having a baby had disrupted everything, the sleep, the schedule, the very structure of existence, wasn't something she should have to apologize for. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. Mark stood on the porch, baby carrier in hand. Lily slept inside, tiny fists curled beneath her chin, her breathing peaceful and even. "Sarah's mother had a stroke," Mark said. His face was gray. "We're leaving in an hour. I'll be back tomorrow night." Victoria's prepared arguments died in her throat. "Mark." "Please," he met her eyes. "I know things are complicated. I know you're still adjusting, but she's our daughter, our responsibility, both of us." Victoria looked at the sleeping infant. So small, so utterly dependent, so completely capable of destroying the careful order she'd rebuilt over the past 8 months. "Tomorrow night," she said, not a minute later. Relief washed over Mark's face. "Thank you. Everything's in the bag, bottles, diapers, her stuffed elephant. She ate an hour ago, so she should be good until 7. He was gone before Victoria could change her mind. The house felt different with Lily in it. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was watchful, waiting for the inevitable cry. Victoria set the carrier on the kitchen island, staring at this tiny human who shared her DNA but felt like a stranger. Lily's eyes opened, blue like Mark's. She looked at Victoria without recognition, without judgment, without any of the complicated emotions that passed between adults. "Just you and me," Victoria whispered. "We can do this, it's just one night." Lily yawned. The afternoon passed in careful routine. Victoria fed her, changed her, set up the portable crib in the guest room farthest from the master suite. Lily was surprisingly calm, watching everything with curious eyes, occasionally making small sounds that weren't quite distress. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. By 6 o'clock, Victoria felt confident enough to pour another glass of wine. She carried Lily outside, settling into a pool lounger while the baby rested in her carrier beside her. The evening sun turned the water gold, peaceful, perfect. Victoria's eyes drifted closed. She woke to splashing. Her brain needed 3 seconds to process what she was seeing. The carrier had tipped. How, she'd never know, and Lily was in the pool, not crying, not screaming. Just sinking, her small body slipping beneath the surface with terrifying silence. Victoria lunged forward, her legs tangling in the lounger. She crashed to the deck, pain exploding through her knee. The wine glass shattered. She scrambled forward on hands and knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but the pool edge was too far, Lily was sinking too fast, and Victoria's legs wouldn't work right. A blur of motion from the fence. Daniel vaulted over the barrier like he'd done it 1,000 times, hitting the ground at a run. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause. He launched himself into the pool in his clothes and shoes, diving deep. His hands found Lily in the murky bottom. He kicked hard, breaking the surface with the baby clutched against his chest. Victoria reached the edge as Daniel swam to the side. He lifted Lily out, water streaming from her tiny body, her face blue, her lips purple. "She's not breathing," Daniel said. His voice was steady, calm. "Call 911 now." Victoria couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process this nightmare. Daniel laid Lily on the deck and started infant CPR. Gentle compressions, careful breaths, the movements practiced and sure. Where had a 10-year-old learned that? Why did he know what to do when Victoria, the mother, stood frozen in shock? Lily coughed, water spurted from her mouth. She gasped, choked, and then mercifully began to cry. The sound broke Victoria's paralysis. She dropped beside her daughter, her hands shaking, her vision blurred with tears. Lily was breathing, alive. Because of the boy Victoria had screamed at that morning, the child she'd called destructive and careless. Daniel sat back, soaked and breathing hard. He looked at Victoria with those dark, knowing eyes. "You should watch her better," he said quietly. Then he stood, walked to the fence, and climbed back over without another word. Victoria held her daughter against her chest and wept. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes, but it felt like 7 hours. Victoria sat on the deck with Lily wrapped in a towel, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, terrified that each breath might be the last. A female EMT with kind eyes checked Lily's vitals while her partner questioned Victoria about what happened. "I closed my eyes for just a second," Victoria heard herself say. The words sounded hollow. "The carrier must have tipped. I don't know how, it was stable, I checked it, but—" "These things happen," the EMT said, but her tone suggested she'd heard that line before. "She's stable now. Oxygen levels are good, but we need to take her to County General for observation. Near-drowning victims can develop complications hours later." Victoria nodded numbly. She climbed into the ambulance, still wearing her wet, wine-stained sundress, and held Lily's hand during the entire ride. The baby had stopped crying, but her eyes were wide and alert, as if she too understood how close they'd come to disaster. At the hospital, a nurse settled them in a pediatric observation room painted with cheerful animals. A doctor came, performed examinations, asked questions. Victoria answered on autopilot. Yes, she was the mother. No, she hadn't been drinking heavily, just 1 glass. Yes, the baby had been secured in the carrier. Yes, she understood the risks of leaving an infant unattended near water. Each question landed like an accusation. "We'll monitor her overnight," the doctor said. "You did the right thing calling 911 immediately." But Victoria hadn't called. She'd frozen. If Daniel hadn't been there. She couldn't finish the thought. Mark arrived at 9 o'clock, his face ashen. He'd driven back the moment Victoria called, leaving Sarah to deal with her mother's crisis alone. He held Lily gently, checking her over with the careful hands of a father who'd imagined the worst. "How did this happen?" His voice was steady, but Victoria heard the undercurrent. She told him everything. The lounger, the moment of exhaustion, the carrier tipping, Daniel's impossible rescue. "The neighbor kid," Mark looked at her in disbelief. "The one you've been complaining about for weeks." "I didn't know he was there." "Victoria," Mark set Lily back in the hospital crib with infinite care. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. It was an accident." You fell asleep next to a pool with our 6-month-old daughter. The words hung between them like a physical barrier. I was tired, Victoria said. I'm not used to being a mother. Mark's control finally cracked. That's what you're going to say? You're not used to it. She's been alive for 6 months, Victoria. When exactly were you planning to get used to it? That's not fair. None of this is fair. Mark's voice rose, then dropped when he remembered where they were. I have tried. God knows I've tried to be patient, to give you space to adjust, to understand that parenthood looks different for everyone, but you can't even handle one afternoon alone with her without nearly. He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. I could have lost her today. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been sitting here imagining what would have happened if that boy hadn't been there? The boy you screamed at, the boy you threatened to call the police on. Shame burned through her like acid. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you care more about your pristine pool and your perfect house than you do about our daughter. Get out, Victoria's voice was ice. If you're just here to make accusations. I'm here because our daughter almost died. Mark grabbed his jacket. And tomorrow I'm calling my lawyer. We're revisiting custody. You're not stable enough to have her unsupervised. He left before Victoria could respond. She sat alone in the dim hospital room, listening to Lily's peaceful breathing, and felt the full weight of her choices pressing down like a physical force. Mark was right. She'd been so focused on maintaining control, on protecting her space and her order, that she'd lost sight of what actually mattered. And a 10-year-old boy had better parenting instincts than she did. At midnight, when the nurse stepped out, Victoria pulled out her phone. She scrolled through the neighborhood Facebook group until she found Rachel's profile. Rachel Mitchell worked as a nurse at County General, which explained how her son knew infant CPR. Widowed 3 years ago. Recent transplant from Oregon, trying to start fresh. Victoria had never bothered to learn any of that, had never asked. She typed a message, deleted it, typed another. Every version sounded inadequate. Finally, Daniel saved my daughter's life today. I need to thank him properly. Can we talk? She hit send before she could overthink it. The morning came slowly. Lily remained stable, her color good, her breathing normal. The doctor discharged them at 7 with instructions for follow-up and stern warnings about water safety. Victoria carried her daughter to the car, hyper-aware of every step, every movement, every potential danger. Mark was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car. He looked like he hadn't slept. I'll take her, he said. Mark, Sarah's mother is stable. We're not needed there today, and I'm not comfortable leaving Lily with you right now. His tone was matter-of-fact, but it cut deeper than anger would have. We'll talk about long-term arrangements later, with lawyers and a mediator. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to demand her rights as a mother. But she looked at Lily, innocent, vulnerable, completely dependent, and knew she didn't deserve those rights. Not yet. Okay, she whispered. She drove home alone. The house felt cavernous. The pool sparkled in the morning sun, beautiful and treacherous. Victoria stood at the glass doors and stared at it, remembering the terror of watching her daughter sink, the helplessness of being too slow, too frozen, too far away. Her phone buzzed. Rachel had responded. I'm home today. Come by whenever you're ready. Victoria changed into jeans and a simple blouse. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn anything so casual. She walked down the sidewalk she'd always driven, noticing things she'd never seen before. The cheerful garden at number 42. The kids' bikes propped against the garage at 47. The sound of laughter from a backyard somewhere. Signs of life she'd spent years trying to avoid. Rachel's house was smaller than Victoria's, the lawn less perfect, with toys scattered across the porch. Victoria's old self would have judged it. Her current self just saw a home where people actually lived. She rang the doorbell. Rachel answered, her expression wary. Victoria. I know I have no right to your time, Victoria said quickly. I know I've been awful, but I need to thank Daniel, and I need to apologize to both of you. Rachel studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in. The interior was cluttered but warm, photos everywhere, mismatched furniture, a half-completed puzzle on the coffee table. Daniel sat on the couch reading a book about marine biology. He looked up when Victoria entered, his face carefully neutral. Hi, Victoria said. She'd prepared a speech, but the words evaporated. You saved my daughter's life yesterday. I don't know how to thank you for that. I don't know how to apologize for the way I've treated you. Daniel closed his book. Mom taught me CPR last year. She said everyone should know it, especially kids who live near water. I practice on a dummy every month. Your mom is very smart. She's a nurse, pride filled his voice. She says being prepared isn't paranoid, it's responsible. Victoria glanced at Rachel, who leaned against the doorframe with her arms crossed. I should have learned that lesson earlier. Should have learned a lot of things, Rachel said, not cruel, just honest. I know, Victoria turned back to Daniel. I was wrong about everything. You're not careless or destructive. You're braver and more capable than most adults I know. And yesterday, when I was useless, you knew exactly what to do. I'm sorry I judged you. I'm sorry I was so terrible to you and your mom. Daniel looked at his mother. Some silent communication passed between them. It's okay, he said finally. I'm glad your baby's all right. Because of you, Victoria's voice cracked. Only because of you. She reached into her purse and pulled out a check she'd written that morning. $5,000. She'd been planning to offer more, 10,000, 15, but Rachel had stopped her with a look. For Daniel's college fund, Victoria said. I know it's not enough. We don't want money, Rachel's voice was firm. Victoria slowly put the check away. Then what can I do? Please, there has to be something. Rachel exchanged another glance with Daniel. The fence between our yards, it's falling apart. The landlord won't fix it, and I can't afford to replace it myself. Daniel's been talking about learning carpentry. She paused. If you want to do something, help us fix it. Actually work with us. Get your hands dirty. Victoria blinked, of all the things she'd expected. I don't know anything about building fences. Neither do we, Daniel said, a hint of a smile appearing. That's kind of the point. We'd figure it out together. Victoria looked at this woman she'd dismissed and this boy she'd scorned and realized they were offering her something far more valuable than forgiveness. They were offering her a chance to be part of something real. Okay, she said. Yes, I'd like that. Rachel nodded slowly. We start tomorrow, 8 a.m. dress for dirty work. Victoria left feeling lighter than she had in months. But as she walked back to her empty house, she realized the real work wasn't building a fence. It was rebuilding herself. Part 3. Victoria arrived at 7:55 the next morning wearing clothes she'd bought specifically for the occasion. Canvas work pants, a plain t-shirt, and boots that had never touched actual dirt. She felt ridiculous. She also felt, for the first time in recent memory, like she might be doing something right. Rachel and Daniel were already in the backyard, examining the fence that separated their properties. Daniel had a notebook, sketching measurements while Rachel pulled on work gloves. You're early, Rachel said, looking surprised. I didn't want to be late. Well, grab some gloves from the box. We're pulling out the old posts first. The work was harder than Victoria had imagined. The posts had been in the ground for decades, their bases stubborn with concrete and compacted earth. Her muscles screamed after the first 20 minutes. Sweat dripped into her eyes. A splinter lodged under her thumbnail, and she had to stop herself from complaining. Daniel worked beside her without comment, his skinny frame surprisingly strong, his movements efficient. Rachel directed the operation with the calm competence of someone used to managing chaos. Why didn't your dad teach you this stuff? Victoria asked Daniel during a water break, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that was intrusive. Daniel took a long drink before answering. He died when I was 7, car accident. He was a teacher, English literature. Mom says he could barely hammer a nail straight. There was no self-pity in his voice, just statement of fact. Mom learned a lot of stuff after he died. She says we have to be able to take care of ourselves because we can't always count on other people. Victoria felt the rebuke even though none was intended. Your mom sounds like a smart woman. She is, Daniel set down his water bottle. You know she works double shifts sometimes, like 16 hours straight. She comes home so tired she can barely walk, but she still helps me with homework, still makes me practice CPR, still makes sure I know I'm safe. You're lucky to have her. I know. They worked in silence for a while. Victoria's thoughts drifted to Lily, currently with Mark at his apartment. The custody mediation was scheduled for next week. Mark's lawyer had made it clear they'd be pushing for primary custody with limited visitation for Victoria. The phrase, demonstrated inability to provide adequate supervision, had appeared in the preliminary documents. She couldn't argue with it. "You thinking about your baby?" Rachel asked, as if reading her mind. Victoria nodded. "My ex-husband is probably going to get full custody. He should. I'm not." She stopped herself. "I'm not very good at being a mother." "You think I was?" Rachel straightened, wiping dirt from her face. "When Tom died, Daniel was 7. I was a wreck. Couldn't get out of bed some days. Couldn't stop crying. I had a 7-year-old depending on me, and I could barely remember to feed him, let alone be there emotionally." Victoria stared. "You seem so together." Now 2 years of therapy and a support group later, but back then, Rachel shook her head. "Daniel ate cereal for dinner more times than I can count. He missed school because I forgot to set an alarm. One time I was so deep in grief that I didn't realize he'd been wearing the same clothes for 3 days. She met Victoria's eyes. "Being a good parent isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, trying, learning from mistakes." "I almost let my daughter drown." "And you're here now, building a fence with strangers, trying to be better. That counts for something." Daniel pulled another post free with a grunt of effort. "This one's out, 4 more to go." They worked through the morning, stopping only for water and snacks Rachel had prepared. By noon, the old fence was down, and they'd started digging new post holes. Victoria's hands were blistered despite the gloves. Her back ached. Her designer sundresses felt like artifacts from a different life. She'd never felt more present. "So why were you so angry about kids near your pool?" Daniel asked during lunch. They sat in Rachel's backyard, eating sandwiches and chips. "It's not just about the pool being expensive, right?" Victoria considered dodging the question, but these people had earned honesty. "My younger brother drowned when I was 12, she said quietly. "We were at a community pool. My parents were talking to friends. I was supposed to be watching him, but I wanted to tan with the older girls. Jimmy was 6. He went into the deep end, and by the time anyone noticed," her throat closed. "It was too late." Rachel's expression softened. "Victoria, I'm so sorry. My parents never said it was my fault, but I knew. I was supposed to watch him. I was responsible." Victoria stared at her sandwich. "After that, I couldn't be around pools without panicking, but I also couldn't let go of the guilt. So when I bought my house, I installed the nicest pool possible. Like if it was perfect enough, beautiful enough, controlled enough, I could somehow fix what happened." "But you never used it," Daniel said. "No, I just protected it, obsessively, because if I could keep it safe, keep everyone away from it, then nothing bad could happen again." Victoria laughed bitterly. "And then I brought my own daughter near it and almost killed her anyway. Because I was so busy controlling everything else, I forgot to control the thing that actually mattered, my attention." "That's not the same thing," Rachel said firmly. "What happened to your brother was a tragedy. What happened with Lily was an accident. You didn't deliberately close your eyes and decide her safety didn't matter." "No, but I've been treating motherhood like an obligation instead of a relationship. I've been so focused on maintaining my old life that I never let myself adapt to my new one." Victoria met Rachel's gaze. "Daniel jumped over my fence and saved my daughter without hesitating. That's instinct. That's love." I froze. What kind of mother freezes when her child is drowning? "The kind who's terrified of becoming the girl who let her brother drown." Rachel's voice was gentle but direct. "You need to forgive that 12-year-old Victoria. She was a kid. She made a mistake, but you're not her anymore." Victoria's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "How do I do that?" "Same way you do everything else. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one fence post at a time." They finished lunch and returned to work. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Victoria's blisters popped, reformed, and popped again. Every muscle in her body protested. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because for the first time since Lily was born, she felt like she was actually building something instead of just protecting what she already had. By 6 o'clock, they'd set 4 new posts in concrete. The fence was taking shape, rough and unfinished, but real. Solid, the product of actual effort. "We'll let the concrete cure overnight," Rachel said, surveying their work. "Tomorrow we'll start attaching the panels." Victoria nodded, too exhausted to speak. "You did good today," Daniel said. He offered her a fist bump, which she returned awkwardly. "Thanks for letting me help." "Thanks for actually helping." Victoria walked home slowly, her body screaming with every step. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Mediation moved up to Wednesday. My lawyer wants to discuss terms beforehand. 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out how to prove she deserved to be Lily's mother. She showered, bandaged her hands, and stood in front of her closet full of expensive clothes she never wore. Her reflection looked different, tired but real, worn but present. The woman who'd screamed at a child for retrieving his ball felt like someone else entirely. Maybe she was. Victoria pulled out her laptop and started researching. Child development, age-appropriate activities, swimming safety. Infant CPR, she scheduled a certification course for next week. She made notes, created lists, built a structure not of control, but of genuine preparation. Her phone rang at 9. Mark. Hi, she answered. Sarah's mother is being discharged tomorrow. We'll have Lily through the weekend, but I wanted to give you an update. He paused. How are you doing? I'm learning to build a fence. What? Victoria told him about Rachel and Daniel, about the work they were doing together, about the conversations they'd had. She didn't minimize her mistakes or make excuses. She just told him the truth. Mark was silent for a long moment. I'm glad you're doing that, but Victoria, I need to know this is real, that you're actually changing, not just performing because you're scared of losing custody. I'm scared of losing custody, but that's not why I'm doing this. Victoria looked out at the half-built fence visible from her window. I'm doing it because Daniel showed me what real courage looks like. A 10-year-old boy knew how to save a life because his mother prepared him. He knew how to act instead of freeze because someone taught him that helping matters more than protecting yourself. And you want to be that person. I want to try. I don't know if I can be a good mother, Mark, but I want to learn how, and I think maybe that's where it has to start. Mark's voice was rough when he spoke again. Bring pictures to the mediation, of you working on the fence, of you with Rachel and Daniel. Show them you're trying. You think it'll help? I think it's a start. And Victoria, I don't want to take Lily away from you. I never did. I just want to know she's safe. She will be, I promise. Prove it. He hung up. Victoria sat in the dark house, listening to the silence that had once felt like peace, but now felt like absence. Then she did something she hadn't done since Lily was born. She called her mother. Victoria, her mother's voice was surprised. They hadn't spoken in months. Is everything all right? No, Victoria said. Mom, I need to tell you about something that happened, and I need to ask you about Jimmy. There was a long pause. What about him? I need you to tell me the truth. Did you blame me for what happened at the pool? Her mother's sharp intake of breath was audible. Oh, sweetheart, no, never. Is that what you've been carrying all these years? And finally, after 3 decades of holding it together, Victoria broke. She cried while her mother listened, while the truth poured out, about the guilt, the control, the fear, Lily's accident, and the boy who'd saved her daughter while Victoria had frozen. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen, and there was nothing left inside except exhaustion. Jimmy's death was an accident, her mother said firmly. A terrible, heartbreaking accident, but you were 12 years old, a child yourself, and I have never, not for 1 second, blamed you. I was supposed to watch him, and I was supposed to be a responsible parent instead of gossiping with friends, and your father was supposed to be sober enough to notice his son was in trouble. There's enough blame to drown in, Victoria, but none of it belongs on your shoulders. You have carried that weight long enough. Victoria pressed her hand against her mouth, trying to breathe through the sobs. Being afraid doesn't make you a bad mother, her mother continued. But letting that fear control you will. Lily needs you present, Victoria, not perfect, just present. Can you do that? I'm trying. Then that's enough. For today, that's enough. They talked for another hour, really talked, in a way they hadn't since before Jimmy died. When Victoria finally hung up, the house felt different, still quiet, but no longer suffocating. She fell asleep on the couch, exhausted and aching, dreaming of fence posts and clear water and a 10-year-old boy who'd known exactly what to do when the adult had failed. Tomorrow, she'd try again. Wednesday arrived too quickly. Victoria dressed carefully for the mediation, professional but not cold, put together but not perfect. Her hands were still bandaged from the fence work, and she didn't hide them. They were proof she was trying, that she was willing to get hurt in the process of building something real. Mark was already in the mediator's office when she arrived, his lawyer beside him. a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen who'd made her reputation on custody cases. Mark looked tired but determined. He nodded when Victoria entered but didn't smile. The mediator, Dr. James Whitmore, was a soft-spoken man in his 60s with the patient air of someone who'd heard every family tragedy imaginable. He gestured for everyone to sit. "Thank you all for coming. This is an informal session to discuss custody arrangements for Lily Hartwell, currently 6 months old. Mr. Hartwell is requesting primary physical custody with supervised visitation for Ms. Hartwell, based on the incident that occurred on." "I know what happened," Victoria interrupted. "You don't have to be polite about it. I fell asleep next to a pool while my daughter was in a carrier. The carrier tipped. She nearly drowned. My neighbor's son saved her life because I was too frozen to act." Dr. Whitmore's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a very direct admission." "There's no point in sugarcoating it. It happened. It was my fault, and Mark has every right to be concerned about Lily's safety in my care." Patricia Chen looked at her client, then at Victoria. "Ms. Hartwell, are you waiving your right to contest the custody arrangement?" "No, I'm admitting what happened so we can talk about what comes next." "What comes next," Mark said, his voice tight, "is ensuring this never happens again." "Agreed, which is why I've enrolled in an infant CPR certification course next week. I've also scheduled a consultation with a child psychologist to discuss my parenting approach and identify areas where I need support. And I've begun building a relationship with my neighbors, the same people I spent months treating terribly, so I can learn what it actually means to be part of a community." Victoria pulled out her phone and showed them photos. Her and Rachel and Daniel working on the fence, covered in dirt and sweat. The half-completed structure. Screenshots of her CPR course registration and her appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, a family therapist specializing in post-divorce parenting. Mark stared at the images. "When did you do all this?" "The fence work started Sunday. The appointments I made yesterday. I know it's not enough. I know 1 week of effort doesn't erase 8 months of being absent. But I'm not asking for full custody. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be better." Dr. Whitmore leaned forward. "Ms. Hartwell, can you tell me about your relationship with your daughter? Not what you think I want to hear, but the truth." Victoria took a breath. "I don't have one. Not really. I've been going through the motions, feeding her, changing her, making sure she's alive. But I haven't been present. I've been treating her like an obligation, like something that disrupted my life rather than someone I chose to bring into the world." "That's quite an admission." "It's the truth, and it's not fair to Lily. She deserves a mother who actually wants to be her mother, not someone who's just checking boxes." "So what's changed?" Patricia Chen asked, skepticism clear in her tone. "I almost lost her, and the person who saved her was someone I'd been awful to, someone I dismissed and belittled, because he represented everything I was trying to keep out of my controlled life. A 10-year-old boy had more courage and competence in that moment than I did. That's not the kind of person I want to be. That's not the kind of mother Lily deserves." Mark's jaw worked. "How do I know this isn't just guilt talking, that 2 weeks from now you won't go back to treating Lily like an inconvenience?" "You don't, I have to prove it." "And if you can't?" Victoria met his eyes. "Then you're right to take custody, but I'm asking for the chance to try." Dr. Whitmore made notes on his legal pad. "Mr. Hartwell, what would you need to see from Ms. Hartwell to feel comfortable with shared custody?" Mark rubbed his face. "Consistency, not just showing up but being engaged, learning about child development, child-proofing her house properly, demonstrating that she can handle Lily's needs without treating them as interruptions." He paused. "And therapy, real therapy, not just a few sessions to look good for the court, but genuine work on whatever's been holding her back from connecting with our daughter." "I've already called Dr. Chen," Victoria said. "I start next week, twice a week to begin with." Patricia Chen looked surprised. Mark looked stunned. "You're serious about this?" he said softly. "I'm terrified about this, but yes, I'm serious." Dr. Whitmore set down his pen. "Here's what I'm going to recommend. We start with supervised visitation, 3 afternoons per week, 2 hours each session. The supervision can be done by Mr. Hartwell or another approved adult. Ms. Hartwell will complete the CPR certification, continue therapy, and after 30 days, we'll reconvene to discuss expanding visitation." "What about overnight visits?" Victoria asked. "Not for at least 60 days. and only if you've made significant documented progress. Dr. Whitmore's expression was kind but firm. Ms. Hartwell, I appreciate your honesty, but Lily's safety is paramount. You'll need to demonstrate sustained change, not just initial effort. Victoria nodded. It was fair, more than fair given what she'd done. I can live with that, Mark said, for now. Patricia Chen added several conditions: completion of a parenting class, installation of pool barriers, regular check-ins with the mediator. Victoria agreed to all of it. The meeting ended an hour later. Victoria walked out feeling drained but oddly hopeful. She'd expected them to take Lily away completely. Instead, she had a chance. Mark caught up with her in the parking lot. "Thank you for not fighting me," he said. "You're protecting our daughter. I can't be angry about that." "The fence thing, that's really what you've been doing." Victoria showed him her bandaged hands. "Rachel and Daniel are teaching me that community matters, that being vulnerable matters, that asking for help isn't weakness." Mark studied her face. "You look different." "I am different, or I'm trying to be." Victoria hesitated. "Can I see her, just for a few minutes? I know it's not part of the schedule yet, but—" "Come over for dinner tonight. Bring pictures of the fence progress. Lily might not understand, but I want to." Victoria's throat tightened. "Really? You're still her mother, and if you're actually trying to be a better one, then I should support that, for Lily's sake." He drove away, leaving Victoria standing in the parking lot, sunlight warm on her face, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she might actually be able to do this. She returned to Rachel's house that afternoon. They'd made significant progress on the fence. The panels were up, the structure sound. Just the finishing touches remained. "How'd it go?" Rachel asked, pausing mid-hammer swing. "I have supervised visitation, 3 times a week to start. If I prove myself, they'll expand it." "That's good, that's a start." "It is." Victoria picked up a paintbrush. They decided to stain the fence a warm cedar color, something that would age naturally. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be part of this, for not telling me to go to hell after how I treated you." "Everyone deserves a second chance. Not everyone deserves a third, but a second." "Yeah." Rachel smiled slightly. "Besides, Daniel likes you now. He says you work hard." "He's a remarkable kid." "He is, but he's also just a kid. One who had to grow up too fast because life was cruel. I watch him sometimes and wonder who he'd be if his father hadn't died, if he didn't have to be so careful and responsible all the time. He'd probably be less capable of saving lives." "True, but I'd trade that capability for him having an easier childhood in a heartbeat." They worked in companionable silence. Daniel came out after school, thrilled to see the fence nearly complete. He grabbed a brush and joined them, chattering about his day, about the science project he was planning, about the summer reading list his teacher had assigned. Normal kid stuff, the kind of noise Victoria had spent years trying to avoid. It was wonderful. At 6, Victoria left to drive to Mark's apartment. Her stomach churned with nerves. This would be the first time she'd seen Lily since the hospital, the first time she'd tried to be a mother while actually feeling present. Mark answered the door with Lily on his hip. The baby had grown in just a week, or maybe Victoria was just seeing her clearly for the first time. "Hi, sweetheart," Victoria whispered. Lily stared at her with solemn blue eyes. No recognition, no smile, just careful observation of this person who was supposed to be her mother but felt like a stranger. Victoria felt the distance like a physical pain. "Come in," Mark said. "I made pasta, nothing fancy." The apartment was smaller than Victoria's house but felt more like a home. Pictures on the walls, Lily's toys scattered on the carpet, the comfortable mess of actual life being lived. They ate dinner while Lily sat in her high chair, gnawing on a teething biscuit and watching Victoria with those assessing eyes. Victoria told Mark about the fence, about her conversations with Rachel and her mother, about the therapy appointments she'd scheduled. "Dr. Chen specializes in parental attachment issues," Victoria said. "She thinks my control issues and my distance from Lily are connected to Jimmy's death, that I've been so afraid of failing another child that I never let myself try." "That makes sense." "It does, but knowing why I've been failing doesn't fix the fact that I have been failing. That Lily doesn't know me, that when she looks at me, she sees a stranger." Mark reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That can change if you let it." After dinner, Mark gave her time alone with Lily. Victoria sat on the floor with her daughter, surrounded by soft toys and board books, and just watched. Lily's expressions, her movements, the way she studied everything with intense focus. "You're so smart," Victoria murmured. "You're figuring out the whole world, and I've missed so much of it. I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm so sorry." Lily reached for a toy piano and banged on the keys, delighted by the noise. Victoria laughed. The sound felt foreign in her throat. She spent 2 hours there just being present, not checking her phone, not thinking about work or her schedule or any of the million things she'd normally use to avoid actual engagement. Just watching her daughter explore the world, beginning to see the person Lily was becoming. When she finally left, Mark walked her to the door. "You did good tonight," he said. "I barely did anything." "That's the point. You were just there. That's what she needs." Victoria drove home slowly, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. The house felt emptier than ever. But instead of pouring wine and retreating to her usual patterns, she opened her laptop and started researching infant development. What milestones should Lily be hitting? What activities would support her growth? What did Bobby's need at 6 months that Victoria had been failing to provide? She read until midnight, taking notes, building a framework not of control, but of genuine engagement. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Fence is done. Looks good. Daniel wants to know if you'll come to his swim meet next Saturday." Victoria stared at the message. She'd never been to a swim meet, hadn't been near a public pool since Jimmy died. But Daniel had saved her daughter's life, and he was inviting her to be part of his. "I'll be there," she typed back. Then she added, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better." Rachel's response came quickly, "Thank you for taking it." Victoria set down her phone and looked around her perfect, empty house. Then she went to the spare bedroom, the one she'd been using for storage, and started clearing space. If she was going to earn back custody, Lily would need a proper room. Not a guest space with a portable crib, but an actual nursery. A place designed for a real child, not a theoretical obligation. She worked until 2 in the morning, hauling boxes to the garage, scrubbing floors, measuring windows for curtains. Her body ached from the fence work and now this, but the pain felt earned. Productive, real. She finally collapsed into bed, exhausted and sore, and dreamed of a baby learning to swim in clear, safe water while Victoria watched from the edge. Not frozen, not afraid, just present. The swim meet was chaos. Victoria stood at the entrance of the Community Aquatic Center, her heart hammering against her ribs, the chlorine smell triggering memories she'd spent decades trying to bury. Families crowded the bleachers. Children shrieked and laughed. Coaches shouted instructions. The water sparkled under fluorescent lights, innocent and terrible all at once. She almost turned around. "Victoria," Daniel waved from the pool deck, wearing a swim team t-shirt and goggles pushed up on his forehead. "You came." That decided it. Victoria forced herself through the doors and found a seat next to Rachel in the stands. The noise was overwhelming. The water was everywhere. Her hands shook in her lap. "You okay?" Rachel asked quietly. "No, but I'm here." "That's what matters." Daniel's heat was the third race, 50-meter freestyle for the 10 and under boys. He took his position on the starting block, looking impossibly small and impossibly brave. The buzzer sounded. He dove in, his form clean, his strokes powerful for his size. Victoria watched him cut through the water and thought about courage. About the fact that this boy who'd lost his father, who'd had to grow up too fast, who'd been screamed at by a bitter neighbor, this boy still showed up. Still tried. Still dove into the water without hesitation. Daniel finished 4th out of 8. When he climbed out of the pool, he was grinning like he'd won gold. "Did you see?" he asked breathlessly when he reached them. "I beat my personal best by 3 seconds. "You were amazing," Victoria said, and meant it. The rest of the meet blurred together. Victoria stayed for all of it, fighting her anxiety, focusing on the present moment. By the end, the chlorine smell was just a smell. The water was just water. The memories were still there, but they didn't own her anymore. Progress, small but real. After the meet, they went for ice cream. Daniel talked nonstop about his races, his teammates, his goals for the season. Rachel watched him with the kind of love that transformed her face, and Victoria felt a sharp pang of envy. That's what she wanted with Lily, that easy affection, that genuine connection. I have supervised visitation with Lily tomorrow, Victoria told them. First official session. I'm terrified I'll mess it up. You'll be fine, Daniel said through a mouthful of chocolate chip. Just play with her, Bobby's like playing. What if she cries? Then you figure out what she needs. That's what moms do. Such simple wisdom from a 10-year-old. The next afternoon, Mark brought Lily to Victoria's house. The nursery Victoria had been frantically preparing still wasn't finished. She'd ordered furniture that wouldn't arrive until next week. But she'd managed to clear the space, paint the walls a soft yellow, and add some age-appropriate toys. Nice, Mark said, surveying the progress. This is good. Lily squirmed in his arms, reaching for a stuffed elephant Victoria had bought. Victoria took her daughter carefully, hyper-aware of Mark watching, of the weight of this moment. I'll be in the living room, Mark said. Call if you need anything. He left them alone. Victoria sat on the floor with Lily in her lap, surrounded by soft toys and board books. For a moment she had no idea what to do. Then she remembered what Daniel had said, just play. She picked up a soft block and handed it to Lily. Look at this, it's squishy. Lily grabbed the block and immediately tried to eat it. Victoria laughed. Not food, though I appreciate your enthusiasm. They played for an hour, stacking blocks, reading books with bright pictures, making silly faces at each other. Lily didn't smile at Victoria the way she smiled at Mark, but she didn't cry either. She tolerated this stranger who was trying very hard to be her mother. It was a start. Over the next 4 weeks, Victoria showed up for every scheduled visit. She completed the CPR certification course, earning perfect scores on both written and practical exams. She attended therapy twice a week, working through decades of guilt and control issues. She finished Lily's nursery with Mark's help, painting a mural of friendly animals on one wall. She also continued working with Rachel and Daniel. They'd started a small garden in the shared space between their properties, teaching Victoria about soil and seeds and the patience required to grow things. Daniel appointed himself her gardening mentor, solemnly explaining the difference between tomatoes and peppers, demonstrating proper watering technique. You're getting better at this, he said one afternoon, watching Victoria carefully transplant a seedling. At gardening. At everything, you smile more now. Victoria looked at him, this remarkable kid who'd saved her daughter and was now teaching her how to nurture life, and felt something crack open in her chest. Thank you, she said, for not giving up on me, for jumping that fence when you could have walked away, for being brave when I was frozen. Daniel shrugged, but his cheeks flushed with pleasure. Mom says everyone deserves help, even people who don't think they do. Your mom is very wise. I know. The second mediation session happened on a Tuesday. Victoria brought documentation, completion certificates from CPR and parenting classes, progress notes from Dr. Chen, photos of Lily's nursery and the garden, statements from Rachel about Victoria's engagement with the community. Dr. Whitmore reviewed everything carefully. This is impressive progress, Ms. Hartwell. Mr. Hartwell, do you have concerns about expanding visitation? Mark glanced at Victoria. They'd been talking more over the past month, real conversations about Lily's development, about co-parenting strategies, about what they both wanted for their daughter's future. I'd like to see overnight visits, Mark said. 1 night per week to start. We can increase from there if things go well. Victoria's heart leapt. Really? You've been showing up, every visit, every appointment, you're trying and I can see the difference. Lily's starting to recognize you, starting to reach for you sometimes. That matters. Dr. Whitmore made notes. I'm comfortable with that arrangement. 1 overnight visit per week with a review in 30 days. Ms. Hartwell, you'll need to demonstrate you can handle nighttime routines, feeding schedules, and any distress without becoming overwhelmed. I can do that, Victoria said. I will do that. The first overnight visit was scheduled for Friday. Victoria prepared obsessively, washing all the new nursery bedding, organizing bottles and diapers, reviewing the sleep routine Mark had written out for her. She was so nervous she barely slept Thursday night. Mark arrived at 6 on Friday with Lily and an overpacked diaper bag. Everything's in there, he said. Bottles, formula, diapers, extra clothes, her sleep sack, her elephant, her. Mark, I've got this. He took a deep breath. I know, sorry, I'm just scared. I know I am too. Call if you need anything, anything at all. I will. He kissed Lily's forehead, squeezed Victoria's shoulder, and left. Victoria stood in her entryway holding her daughter and felt the full weight of responsibility settle over her. No one was here to supervise. No one was here to step in if she failed. Just her and Lily and 18 hours to prove she could be the mother her daughter deserved. She could do this. The evening went better than Victoria had dared hope. Lily ate her bottle without fuss, played with her toys, and only cried once, when she got overtired. Victoria managed the bedtime routine with minimal fumbling, reading 3 board books in the rocking chair Mark had helped her assemble. When Lily finally fell asleep, Victoria sat beside the crib and watched her daughter breathe, overwhelmed with love and terror in equal measure. "I'm so sorry I wasted your first 6 months," she whispered. "I'm sorry I let fear control me, but I'm here now, I'm really here." Lily slept through the night, or close enough. She woke once at 3 a.m. for a bottle, but Victoria had prepared everything in advance. She fed her daughter in the quiet darkness, surrounded by the soft glow of a nightlight, and felt something shift inside her. This was what she'd been missing, this connection, this presence, this overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful responsibility. By the time Mark returned Saturday afternoon, Victoria was exhausted and elated. "How'd it go?" he asked, examining Lily for any signs of distress. "It was perfect. Well, not perfect. She spit up on me twice and I couldn't figure out how to fold the stroller and I may have put her onesie on backwards at one point. But we survived. We more than survived." Mark smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. "You did it." "We did it, Lily and me." Over the following weeks, the overnight visits increased. One night became 2, then 3. Lily started smiling when Victoria walked into a room, started reaching for her, started showing the beginning signs of attachment that Victoria had been too afraid to seek. Dr. Chen called it breakthrough progress. Victoria called it the hardest, most rewarding work of her life. 3 months after the pool incident, Victoria hosted a backyard barbecue. Mark and Sarah came with Lily. Rachel and Daniel came from next door. Even Victoria's mother drove down from New York, eager to meet the neighbors who'd helped transform her daughter. They gathered around the pool, now properly fenced with multiple safety barriers, the water crystal clear in the summer sun. Daniel and some of the other neighborhood kids splashed and played while the adults watched, attentive but not anxious. "Remember when you threatened to call the cops on my kid?" Rachel said, laughing as she handed Victoria a beer. "God, I was awful." "You were hurt, there's a difference." Victoria watched Daniel execute a perfect dive. "He's incredible. You raised an incredible kid." "We raised each other. That's how it works sometimes." Mark settled beside Victoria with Lily on his lap. The baby reached for her mother, and Victoria took her gratefully, kissing her dark curls. "I've been thinking about the custody arrangement," Mark said. Victoria's stomach clenched. "What about it?" "I want to move toward 50-50 custody. Equal time, equal responsibility." "Really?" "You've proved yourself, more than proved yourself, and Lily deserves both her parents fully present." He paused. "Also, Sarah and I are talking about having a baby. We'll need the flexibility." "Mark, that's wonderful." "It's terrifying, but also wonderful, kind of like everything else about parenting." They sat together, watching their daughter watch the world, and Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years: contentment. Not the rigid control she'd mistaken for peace, but actual satisfaction with life as it was, messy and complicated and beautiful. Daniel climbed out of the pool and ran over, dripping on the deck. "Victoria, you should come in. The water's perfect." Victoria looked at the pool, her pool, the thing she'd protected and feared and used as a barrier between herself and life. The place where her daughter had almost died and been saved by this brave, wonderful kid standing before her. "You know what? I think I will." She handed Lily to Mark and stood. She hadn't been in a pool since she was 12 years old. Hadn't let water touch her face or her body voluntarily in decades. But Daniel was grinning at her with excitement, and Rachel was nodding encouragement, and this was her pool, her water, her chance to reclaim what fear had stolen. Victoria walked to the edge, took a breath, and jumped. The water closed over her head, cool and shocking and clean. She surfaced, gasping and laughing, and saw Daniel cheering, Rachel applauding, Mark holding up Lily to watch, her mother dabbing at her eyes. All these people who'd helped her find her way back to herself. "How is it?" Daniel called. Victoria floated on her back, looking up at the blue sky. "It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect." Later that evening, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep in her crib, Victoria stood in the nursery doorway and thought about the past 3 months. About how close she'd come to losing everything that mattered. About the boy who'd saved her daughter and in doing so had saved Victoria too. She thought about Jimmy, really thought about him for the first time in years without drowning in guilt. About the 6-year-old who'd loved dinosaurs and chocolate milk and making people laugh. About the brother she'd lost but never properly mourned because she'd been too busy punishing herself. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," she whispered into the darkness. "But I'm going to make sure I don't lose anyone else. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be the person you deserved me to be." The house settled into comfortable quiet, not empty, just peaceful. Victoria checked on Lily one more time, then walked out to the backyard. The pool lights cast rippling patterns across the water. The fence Daniel had helped her build stood solid and strong. The garden they'd planted together was beginning to flourish. Evidence of community, of vulnerability, of the courage required to ask for help and accept it. She pulled out her phone and texted Rachel, "Thank you for not giving up on me." The response came immediately, "Thank you for not giving up on yourself. That's the hard part." Victoria smiled and walked back inside, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Ready to be imperfect and present and exactly the mother Lily needed. Not because she had to be, but because she finally wanted to be. And that made all the difference.